All right, we're live.
Recording. What is up, everybody?
Hey guys.
It is Wednesday, and we are back.
We're back.
We have had a little bit of a hiatus. Actually, it took a lot longer to set up. We were setting up, and
Technical difficulties.
the laptop froze, the mic and the laptop, because whatever, it just didn't work out. And I know.
Children.
And a few minutes ago, I said 5 minutes, and
Which snap you did?
I did. Because we came in and I said, let's take 5 minutes. Because I figured by the time we opened this up.
Yeah.
And it didn't. It took longer.
It did not take 5 minutes.
Sure enough, but
Is
we're
that
here.
slanted or is it fine? Phone.
I think it's fine.
Okay.
Anyway.
We're here.
So today we are finally back on the podcast. And we were going to talk about one of the things that we have either not talked about, or I think that if you are new to the show, one of the very first shows was an interview with her.
And it wasn't even on video.
It wasn't on video. It's on SoundCloud.
Yeah.
And I was doing the podcast by myself, and I interviewed a couple of people, and I think the second person that I interviewed was her. Fern was first.
Okay.
Shout out to Fern.
Hey, Fern!
And then we talked about her. And when we did that interview, all we talked about was being a mom, working out, and having some balance between that mom role and taking care of yourself.
Yeah, it wasn't fully about fitness.
Right.
And stuff like that.
And then she was back on the show right after she did her first photo shoot to talk about her decision about competing in the WBFF and what led to that. And then we interviewed her again after the show to talk about her experience.
Yeah.
And since then, she was on 2 or 3 more times. This was all before we kind of rebranded the show into a collab where we did it together. And we've always talked about how her experience for that show went and what she thought and her thoughts on it and so on and so forth. But today, this morning during our morning walk, we decided that one of the things that we should both do is talk a little bit more about the beginning or the background behind
stories,
why it all started.
Yeah.
So I think it really starts at the very beginning.
It's funny, by the way, thinking back at that first interview, I was so nervous.
I remember.
I remember being like, I'm in my living room, like,
and we were just talking with a mic.
Yeah, I was petrified.
Yeah.
No video,
no.
I was so shy of even like going through an experience like that in my own home with just you.
Yeah.
So we've come a long way.
We've come a long way. So this goes back to Lee Haney winning his 8th Mr. Olympia. Is that where we're starting?
I'm like, what?
Because that's when I got the
You're the one in charge of.
That's when I got the first Muscle and Fitness. No?
Oh my God.
Okay, we're not going that far back.
Yeah. Do it.
It's a long time ago. So a few years ago, I think it was November.
Okay, I don't know.
Could it have been Thanksgiving?
Maybe.
Okay, so a few years ago, she was browsing through Instagram and came across a picture. And if you follow her on IG, and if you don't, you should, her Instagram handle will be in the show notes. How cool is that?
Fun.
Yeah.
So professional. I have no idea how to do that. Good thing you run this show.
She wrote this morning about scrolling through Instagram and seeing a picture that caught her attention, and today she actually shared a similar picture or the same picture of her doing it. But she was scrolling through Instagram back then and came across something and came to talk to me about if I knew anything about it, right? Do you remember?
Yes.
I'm only saying November because I remember December talking about the goal or starting.
Yeah, it was definitely around November. Well, the funny thing is, it was somebody that I had met. So I was scrolling through Instagram and I came across a picture of a girl on a stage in a costume like that, and she was like super fit. But what caught my attention was also because we had seen her like 6 months before in person, and she didn't look anywhere near that. mind you, like, you would think that because we had been together for a while and have the gym and all that stuff, that I would know how these things work. But like, I really didn't. I was like, there's no way that someone can change the way that they look that much in 6 months. Like, that's impossible, right? Even with all of this, even though this was our life, it was really his life. And I was, home with Junior and whatever, but I just was not aware that you could change your physique that drastically. So that was the first thing that caught my attention. I was like, oh my God, like, no way, that's her. That's what she looks like now, 6 months later. How did this happen? And then I'm like, and what is this stage? Because, ever since I met him, hi Nancy. Ever since I met him, we've watched different, bodybuilding shows. And we would watch the Mr. Olympia and the Arnold, and I would watch those shows, and I'd be like, holy crap, it's so intense. Like, those physiques are just intense. Like, I have so much respect for it, but I would never want to look like that. And I would love to set a goal that big, and that's where we would always go back and forth with. So when I saw this picture, I'm like, what is this stage? Like, this person, first of all, was not in shape 6 months ago, and second of all, like, what is this costume and this fit physique is so normal, right?
Or appealing. It was
appealing. It was feminine. It was curvy and thicker, and there was a lot of definition, but it was still very feminine. So I asked him, I'm like, do you know what this is? Like this. So I started digging, on Instagram, and I'm like, what is this? And I saw the WBFF, and I saw a bunch of other girls with similar physiques and costumes, and I was like, what is this? Like, do you know what the WBFF is? I had never heard of it. I had no idea what it was. That was...
And I said, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, how come you never told me this existed? What the hell?
So she said, do you think that this is something that I could do? And I said, of course. She said, how many years is it going to take? I said, it's not going to take any amount of years. I said, honestly, the truth is that the way it works is, depending on what your starting point is, right? You would figure out more or less when you would want to do a show.
Yeah.
And then depending on the length of time between the time that you decide and the show, you figure out if you have enough time to get ready based on your starting point. It's not a, could I ever do this? It's more if I wanted to do this, how long would it take? It's like, well, which show did you want to do? So she started digging in more and found that there were shows everywhere, but there was one coming up in the summer in Orlando.
Well, originally I saw there was a show, so this is November.
Right.
The schedule came out in December, a month later. And there was a show in Miami in November of the following year. And I was like, do you think that I could be ready in like 11 months? This is so crazy. And he's like, I think that that's way too long. And I was like, what? Are you nuts? Like, there's no way. And he saw that there was a show in Orlando in June. So it was like half the amount of time, but still close, because that's the other thing. Like, at the time, we weren't really looking into flying somewhere and doing a big travel because we didn't even know if I was going to like it.
Right.
So we were like, let's stay local so that we can feel it out and see if we like it and enjoy the experience. And you said Orlando in June, and I was like, he's fucking crazy. Like, there is no way. Why can't we just do Miami? He's like, it's too far out. You'll be fine. You can do this show.
Right.
So we decided.
Well, we decided. And
I trusted you.
Right, and she wanted to know what's going to go into it. Am I going to have to starve?
Die.
Like, all the misconceptions that everybody she had at the moment. And I said, that's not the way it's going to go, I said, but if you really want to do it, then here's what we're going to have to do. And it was right around the holidays. So we had Christmas and New Year's and... was my mom staying with us?
Your mom, because the hurricane.
Right, so it was.
So this for 2 months.
So it was right after the hurricane that hit Puerto Rico. So there was still no power on the island. So my mom had come over. So it was Thanksgiving. It was Christmas, New Year's. So
I got sick.
Yes.
Remember?
So while she had decided in late November that she wanted to do this, her prep did not start until late January. I would even say February.
Yeah, beginning of February.
Right.
Really start.
Like really start where it's like, okay, day one.
Yeah.
We had a lot of day ones.
Yeah.
We had a lot of day ones. I would say maybe it wasn't until February that you had week 1 complete, that you actually went through
Yeah.
the whole week.
Isn't that crazy?
I know. And sure enough, there were a million other things going on at the time.
Yeah.
But
a million things.
I think that
a million things happened during that prep.
I think that she not only, like most people, did not think that it was possible for her.
No way.
Nor was she the kind of person that wanted to get on stage in a bikini and say, "Look at me." So I think that when we embarked on this journey, we got so much more out of it.
Oh, yeah.
But never was that what we thought we would get, if that makes sense.
100%. And I think, like, I don't even know, like, looking back now, like, what made me even think about doing it. Because, like, okay, so I know what made me think about doing it.
Because you weren't out of shape.
I wasn't out of shape. I had been working out for a few years, but my food was all over the place. I wasn't out of shape, but I wasn't in shape either. I wasn't overweight,
right.
But I wasn't, like, I didn't have any kind of muscle definition that I could clearly see.
Okay.
You know? And my eating habits were, yeah, let me do really good all week. Like, what do you think I should eat during the week? And I would kind of eat it. And then on the weekend, it was like a freaking party.
Mm-hmm.
From I'm gonna cook pasta and bake brownies and it was all weekend, and I'm gonna have all the wine I can have. Like, it was like I completely undid it all over the weekend. But at the time, I was a very shy person, very not like, look at me, all eyes on me. Like, I remember even we went on a trip a couple years before that, and I remember we went to Puerto Rico, and I remember you being like, go stand in front of this thing and I'll take a picture. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm not going to be in a picture by myself. Right. I was so shy. I was so not a front of the room person. So for me, the thought of getting on stage in a bikini, it was like, I didn't even want to think about that part.
Right.
Like, I just wanted to see if I actually could transform my body. And I figured that I needed a big goal in order to actually stick it out. Because I had been doing the whole, I do really good for a week or two during the week, and then screw it all up over the weekend for years.
Right.
So I was like, I need to commit to something bigger so that I could, like, really stick this out.
How much of you at the very beginning thought, I'm not really gonna get on stage?
I honestly, I thought that up until I was backstage. I was like, I already got a chip. I really don't have to do this. Like, I could just not. They could call my name and I could just not go. And then even during that journey, not to skip ahead because there's something else I want to say, but even during that journey, there were many times where I was like, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm just gonna, and literally every single time that I had told myself that day that I was gonna give up, someone would ask me about it. So I would walk into the gym and someone would be like, how's your prep going? Or how many more weeks do you have? Or, oh my God, you're starting to look great. Like, literally every time that I told myself, no, like, I'm not doing this. Like, this is too hard, even though it really wasn't. It was just, It was the first time I was that consistent that long. Or, there's no way my body's gonna transform how it needs to. Like, any day that was a hard day, I would get some sort of sign.
You know what I find?
Question.
I find what you just said, and I think we're probably gonna make that like a soundbite.
Okay.
Because I think that what you just said is one of the things that I've been thinking about for a long time, and it's the biggest difference between this goal and other goals is not the difficulty of the dieting or the training. It's the challenge of the consistency much further than most people are willing to go.
100%.
And because the truth is that one of the things that I wanted to get out of your prep was to prove or solidify that you didn't have to suffer in order to get the outcome that you wanted, that you didn't have to do all the things,
traditional things.
Not traditional, but all the misconceptions that are out there about how people think you have to eat. Yeah. Because even during your prep, people were like, oh, so you're boiling all your food,
or you're not eating rice, or you're doing a lot of cardio. It's like, no.
So I wanted to take advantage that it was so close to home because I could monitor all of it to prove that you didn't have to, right? But I think that even within that, even with all the Pop-Tarts and the fun
Cuban
foods
bread,
that she ate, I think that the biggest obstacle was doing it far longer than you had anticipated.
Yeah.
And I think that happens to everybody.
Yeah.
It's not the difficulty of the diet, it's the length of time that is so much more than most people do anything.
It's almost like your body wants to protect you from succeeding in a lot of ways. Like it's like you have to find a way to get in your own way. And now I can look back and see that. But at the time it was like there was absolutely no reason on any given day why I felt like this is just not gonna happen today. Like there was no reason. Like I literally had Cuban toast and Pop-Tart in my plan.
Right.
Like I own a gym. Like there was no reason for any of it to feel so hard. And I had a lot of days where I was like, this is not gonna happen. Fuck this shit. Like for what? It's like you're trying to find a way to sabotage yourself.
Right.
You know, and the funny thing is, back to all the stuff that people do to prep for a show, I'm still learning and realizing that there are things out there that I've never heard of. We're talking shows later, like I've been doing this for a couple years now, and I'll still get to a show and I'll meet somebody and I'll hear about what they're doing, and I'm like, I'll text him or I'll call him, or when I see it, I'm like, that's a thing? Like people do this to get on stage? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, what? Like we the way we do things, or the way you do things, is so just not the norm.
Right.
But I've never known any different because I've never done it in a different way.
But let's not skip ahead.
Yeah,
let's talk about
why I did it.
Well, let's talk about why you did it, and then let's talk about how you overcame the personal, you know what, I'm just going to give up.
Okay. So why I did it, because I wanted to change the way that I looked. The same way that given day I had been scrolling on Instagram and come across this girl and happened to find out about the WBFF. I had a lot of moments of scrolling through Instagram and being like, oh my God, like how do these girls look like this? You know, and it started to become why can't I do it? Like, and I'll go from like, why couldn't I look like that, to like, yeah, there's no way I could look like that, because I didn't have the belief, or because I thought it would take so much suffering that it wasn't worth it. Like these people definitely don't have a life. Like there's no way that they're happy with their everyday life and they look like that.
Right.
You know?
Gotta be miserable.
Yeah. Or you gotta work out all day and whatever. So, but I really wanted to change the way that I looked. Like I really, really did. And then you put on top of that, you know, Junior was like 2 years old. And I worked out through my entire pregnancy and before. I had we were really on top of my food during my pregnancy, and not because I wanted to deprive myself of things, but I really was disciplined, I think more than ever.
I think that in all the time, that was probably the most structure she had, because she was being cautious of for him.
Yeah.
And it was the most disciplined, not structured, and we didn't cut things out, nothing like that. But it was the most regimented she had been.
Yeah.
With her eating and her training, because she literally, not only did she work out the entire pregnancy in our classes, but it was even just days before. We were on a 5-mile walk in the middle of July.
Yeah,
outside, just days before she gave birth. You know?
I really wanted to stay active. I really wanted to stay hydrated. If I had cravings, I really kept it like, he makes fun of me all the time because I would have like 5 M&Ms. Like I really was, because I wanted to do what was best for the baby. So I really was careful. So I didn't like blow up during my pregnancy, but I still gained like 35 pounds.
Right.
Because you do, and I had a C-section and whatever. So,
So there you go. 35 pounds gained, C-section.
Yeah.
And we still worked around that.
Totally. But I was in a place where I wasn't happy with my body, because I wanted to achieve something like crazy at the time.
Right.
But also because I was just in a place where I was going through the motions, like we started saying when we first started this podcast. This really all was your thing. I didn't really have my thing after Junior. I had my thing before Junior. I had plenty of my things, you know, and I know that in the end everything was our thing, but I wasn't working on anything I wasn't working toward anything for me or anything that fulfilled me. And my entire life, I thought that all I ever wanted was like, I just want to have kids. And I've always been very nurturing and very had a very strong desire to just be home and raise kids. And when I got that, it wasn't that I didn't want it. It's just that I didn't want just that. And it was a very big shock for me, and it was a very hard thing for me to even come to terms with, because I spent my entire life thinking that was it. And when I got it, I was like, wait, like, why am I not happy? Like, why am I not ecstatic, like this is what I wanted, this is what I always wanted, right? But it wasn't, and
there was still a void.
There was a void because there was nothing that I was doing that was for me. And while doing stuff for them always brings me the most happiness and fulfillment, doing stuff just for them wasn't enough. So when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, like, could I do this? Could I change the way that I look? Could I stick something out that long? Could I do something for me? But I didn't really look at it at the time as in like, I'm going to do this for me to prove to myself that I could do it. It was when the moments of doubt started to creep in that I was like, no, like I'm not going to give up on this goal. I'm going to prove to myself that I could do it. And a lot of those moments, it was about proving it to other people. It was about proving it to the people that were asking me about it.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, we run a fitness business.
Right.
We train people, we coach people, we do nutrition coaching. And having testimonials is part of the business. If you've ever seen an ad where somebody's offering some kind of service, the before and after is what gets someone's attention.
Yeah.
Right? So back to, I wanted to take advantage that we could create such a tremendous after, right? But I wanted to do it using the principles of, creating flexibility and having life balance. And yes, you have kids, and yes, you have birthday parties, and yes, you want to go out to dinner on the weekend. But you are still preparing for a really big outcome, and that's not 7 days a week of eating junk and going out. It is, where does it fit in within the goal that you have? Yeah,
100%. But during that journey, while I set out to transform the body and myself physically, which is what everyone does when they start a journey, like, as much as people are aware that they want to feel good, that they want to be healthy for themselves and for their kids, and they don't want any health issues, like, as much as we are all very, like, aware of that, the part of looking good always, I think, outweighs everything else that we know are important, because it's important to feel good. And when you look good, you feel good.
That's very true.
And when you look good and feel good, then you're better for the people around you. So everyone is aware of how important it is for you to feel good about you.
Yes.
But at the time, that's really what I was looking for.
And how critical, sorry to interrupt you, but how critical is it, knowing what you know now, to do it in a safe and healthy way, as opposed to getting ready for an event like this where you're constantly depriving yourself and feeling like crap all the time? How do you show up for other people if you feel like crap?
It's like, I can't even begin to tell you, not only during the prep, it's important that you're able to show up for everyone else. Everyone says this is a selfish sport. I completely disagree. I think there's nothing selfish about it. I think that if anything, you can have the people around you kind of join in on your new habits, on your walks. You can see they are watching you show up for yourself. They are watching you do something for you. There's nothing selfish about it in the way that we do it this way.
Right.
I actually saw a post on Instagram yesterday of somebody that was eating something, and they said, this was the first cookie that I ate after my last prep. I hadn't had sugar in 6 months, and I was like, the hell is wrong with you? Like, there is no amount of abs that will make me cut out sugar for 6 days. Forget 6 months. Like, how do people live like that? And how do you think that person was acting with the people around her? And how do you think she felt? Like, you're messing up your everything by depriving it. So
that isn't what we wanted.
It's so critical. That's not what I wanted.
No, we don't want, let's not knock on anybody's.
And that's why I'm not naming any names. I'm just saying, like, that's out there, right? Like, that's a thing, and I couldn't imagine it. To each its own, whatever works for you. Right. But the thing that I was gonna say is, not just during the prep and how you're showing up for people around you and how you're going through life, because you still gotta show up to work, you still gotta be a parent, you still gotta be a friend and a partner. After the prep, the amount of issues that you can cause, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally to someone that is not prepping that way. Because now all of a sudden they don't have that goal, they don't have those restrictions, right? Because if you're restricting a lot, they don't have this path, and now they go on an opposite path, and now you go from feeling really good about yourself to stressing about everything that you eat.
Right.
And I can't eat this, and I shouldn't eat this, and I haven't eaten this, and oh my God, the extra weight, and oh my God, I look completely different. Now you created a problem instead of fix it.
Right.
It backfires. It has the opposite effect that you should and could get out of a journey like this.
So what were some of the things that made you get over those humps? I know you said that people would come up to you specifically around the time when you wanted to quit.
Yeah.
Were those, was it really important to let a lot of other people know you were doing it?
Yes.
At least for this show.
100%. For that first show, like, I did it. I initially put it out on Instagram and told people because I was excited, right? And I was like, I'm excited. Let's see what we can do here. But then when I started to see that they were basically keeping me accountable, then I started to share even more because I realized that it was keeping me accountable.
Right.
So I was like, the more I share, the more questions I get asked, or the more I see that people are watching. So it's going to make me stay on track.
Right.
So that's why that was very important for me to share what I was doing. And then later found out there were a lot of other reasons why that was important. But
right.
At the moment, it was just really to keep myself accountable and to share my journey and to have a place where I could talk about all those things, or even though I wasn't a social media person and I wouldn't take a picture of myself or take videos of myself, like I was not like that. But I'm like, if I can post anything ever, this is the place to do it so that I can keep myself accountable.
What were some of the moments that you had that you said that you were just on the verge of saying, you know what, this is it, you know, I'm done, and then found that by continuing you actually got more out of it?
Yeah, I think it's in those days that you really dig deep, that you build the confidence. Like, everyone thinks that the confidence comes from the physical results, the abs, or you know, the like you don't have cellulite, or maybe you overcame the fear of getting on stage. All of those things are real and all of those things are great. But where everything adds up, and it's all like little and little and little things that add up to a big thing. You don't wake up a different person from one day to the next. You don't randomly have, you know, the confidence or the courage to do something just because you woke up today with abs, you know? Plenty of people with abs, right? Plenty of people with abs don't have the confidence to get on stage.
Right.
So that's not the thing. It's the everyday. It's in the moments where you're like, I really don't want to get this workout in, or I really don't want to eat this food because it's too much, or because I'd rather have X, Y, Z. Or when you are close to a show, that you are at an event and you do have to not eat that, because while there's a lot of flexibility, there are also moments where you can't, just because you're so close. Whether it was those moments or whether it was in the moments where I would look at myself in the mirror and be like, there's no freaking way this is happening.
Right.
Like, it is
just
not going to happen. Like, I told them, I'm like, I would have fired you so many times just because I'm the person that needs to see it happen, and it's like, it just does not come together quick. And it does not come together the way you expect.
That is so great that you said that, because we did talk about that so many times.
Yep.
Because she, like, just knowing her, yeah, she'd probably go coach to coach to coach to coach to coach.
I would have been that person.
Because it's not instant. There is no instant gratification. Mm-hmm. And like anything else, you have a plan that you are going to execute, and you have targets along that plan, and your destination isn't until that day, right? So you are planning on reaching a certain look by that time.
Yeah.
And I remember, and we've shared some of the pictures that you took like midway through, and you know, you could argue that she looked worse midway through this process than she even did when she started.
Yeah.
100%. And that's normal.
Yeah, because you know, and people say this to me all the time, and it kind of annoys me, but I get it. It's like, well, you were never heavy. Like, I still had a baby, first of all, but okay, maybe I wasn't heavy. Maybe I didn't have 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds to lose. But I had zero definition to my body.
Right.
And the thing that happens is when you're doing something like this, where you want to look toned, right? Everyone wants to look toned. Everyone wants the lines. The lines means that there's muscle there.
Right.
And there was no muscle there. And if there's no muscle there, then you don't have lines. You're just flat.
I think that when people say things like you were never heavy, it's because they don't have another way of expressing what they're really thinking, and what they're really thinking is that as soon as I lose weight, I'll look that way,
right?
Because there is no connection to the amount of muscle that you need.
And the other thing is, what people don't know is how hard and how long it takes for you to put on muscle. And muscle is what you need to have the definition, to have the lines.
Right.
It takes a lot longer to put on muscle than it does to shed 10 pounds.
Right.
It really does, like 10 times the amount of time in my book. So it's like, you know, I had to put on size.
And there's always that fear, like, oh, I don't want to get too big.
Yeah, I wish it was that easy.
Like that, you know.
I had to put on size. I had to put on muscle. When I say that, I don't mean like we're talking about a couple of pounds. We're talking about a very small difference. I've been at it for years, and I still have so much more that I need to do. And even today we were talking about it, or even after my last show, and it's like, all right, how much muscle can I put on in the next 6 months?
Well, right now we are projecting, 3 pounds.
3 pounds in 6 freaking months.
And that's
like, I'm sorry, but you could probably lose 50 in 6 months. Just saying. So it's not easy. And when I started that process of putting on muscle or building muscle, I looked worse because I was like, I was skinny-ish, but I still had a little bit of cellulite, and I was very just stick and flat, like I've always been my whole life. But I wanted legs, and I wanted a butt, and I wanted the shape, and with that shape comes a lot of work. And initially, I created a lot more cellulite, and I was like, what is happening? Like, we are supposed to get on stage. You're not supposed to film me with cellulite. What is happening? What are you doing?
Imagine that conversation.
Yeah.
Imagine how
you don't know what you're doing.
Imagine how I had to navigate through that. It's not easy, but it's what I said a few minutes ago. It's the consistency required is much further than most people are willing to go. I think that sometimes people envision getting an outcome and they're willing to go. It only records 30 minutes.
Okay.
And you got to start it again.
Okay.
Most people are only willing to go whatever amount of time they've been willing to go in the past. So in the past, they restricted something and dieted for 2 weeks. That's as far as they're going to go.
Yeah.
So going past those 2 weeks is a celebration, and that's great.
Yeah.
But going weeks and weeks and weeks to actually discover what the right path is going to be, to get an outcome that you get to keep, because that show was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And all we've done is make progress since then.
But back to what I was saying about all the little things adding up, like the days that are hard, or the days where you don't see it coming together, or the days where you'd rather do something else, or the days where you're just physically tired, or the days when your kid is sick, and the days, there are many of those days. Like,
life gets in the way no
matter what. People
always
think that people that are in shape, are some kind of freaking aliens.
Or that they live in the gym,
Life happens the same way for all of us. And that first prep specifically, we had a million things going on in our personal life, with family, with work, with everything. It was a hard time. And I kind of was at the very least, prepping for the show, looking forward to the show was kind of the only thing that I could control at the time. I could control that I was eating what I was eating, and I could control that I was working out, and I could control this journey I was on. I probably couldn't control anything else that was happening to me or for me at the time.
Right.
But that I could, and I kind of just really went all in on that once I was on track. But all those little moments are what add up to the confidence and to the feeling proud of yourself for setting a goal that big and accomplishing it. And even then, it didn't happen overnight. I was still, even after that first show, in disbelief. Right. It wasn't like I prepped 6 months and I got on stage once and I am who I am today.
Right.
I'm still on a journey. Right? You're forever, I feel on a journey. But
even having this conversation on camera or live is one of the outcomes that came as a result of this journey. And like she said, not because she did it once, it's who she's become in the process along the way. And looking back now, I don't know what made me feel like I could or like I should set out to do this, other than the fact that I was feeling very not content and empty in a lot of ways, and this was kind of all right, let's do this. And it could have failed, and I could have hated it, and I would have had to find something else, but you have to find something. Right. And it just so happened that I fell in love with all of this, with prepping, with everything that goes into getting yourself ready for a show that was outside of prepping, like the posing, like the suit, like the photo shoots. There are so many aspects of it that just really brought me to life in a lot of ways. And it didn't change me, it just exposed the side of me that I guess I've always wanted. Because a lot of times you watch girls that do all those things and you're like, oh my God, I wish that I had that body, and I wish that I had that confidence, and a lot of times, the stuff that you see, people aren't that confident or that happy. Right. But a lot of times,
most times they weren't born that way. Yeah, there are people who are born and they're totally like extroverted and out there and not camera shy. Good for them. But not everyone that is in a position of like when you're watching them that you're like, damn, I wish I was like her. Not everyone started off that way.
Right.
You know, and even with the posing now, like it just, I can't believe that I get to coach people and that I'm good at that, because in the very beginning, I mean, that was like my biggest fear. I think I was more afraid of having to pose on stage than I was of like getting on stage out of shape.
Right.
I would have been okay like if my body never transformed, but I was so petrified of posing. Like the thought of walking around, I don't even care, even if it was, people say like, I want a bikini, like I didn't care about the bikini part, because in clothes, like
right.
with a mask would have freaked me out.
Right.
Like just having to walk like that and pose like that and flick my hair and make faces, I was like, I am not a model. This is way out of my wheelhouse. What the fuck am I doing? This was a dumb idea. This was such a bad idea. And even during my coaching sessions, I would be like, you have to leave.
Right.
Like, you cannot watch me do this. This is so embarrassing. Like, I couldn't even do it in front of him. And I remember one day you were like, you do realize you're going to do this, like, on a stage, right? Like, with a lot of people. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. It's not happening until it's happening. And I swear to you, I totally blacked out during that moment. Like, I don't remember a second of that first stage experience.
And one of the things that I say to everyone on our team now is always when they start, it's, you know, once you complete this journey and once you get on stage, you know, you can check it off, right? You did it.
Yeah.
But one of two things, you're either going to get off stage and be like, that was cool, I'm glad I did it, you know, I'd like to do all these other things now or whatever. Or you get off and you say, wow, that was amazing, I can't wait to do it again. And it's just one of the two things, yeah. Right? And I told her that before she got on, and when I was waiting for her to come out from backstage, she was maybe 12 feet away, and she was like, okay, so in November, here's what we're gonna do. And it was, you know, she was already on.
Yeah.
While she blacked out in the moment,
yeah,
it did create enough of an impact.
Yeah, I blacked out in the moment, and I remember walking off stage being like, thank God that's over. I never want to do that again for like literally a hot 5 seconds.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God, but imagine if I did master this posing thing, right. And I did change my body more. Yeah.
And that was, and literally we drove back down the next day, and on the way down, we were already mapping out the next show.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And I wish people knew that you don't have to like be able to imagine it, because yes. There are a lot of people who are good at imagining. Mm-hmm. Like they do their dream boards and they imagine this and that's amazing. I can't. Like I'm not there yet where I could still with every aspect of life. Like I'll make plans and I talk about the things that I want to achieve and whatever, but for me to like crystal clear imagine it and believe that I'm gonna do it because I set my mind to it, even though I've done a bunch of things like that in my life up until this point, I don't have that. And I feel like a lot of people hold themselves back because they can't imagine actually doing it. I can't imagine actually prepping for a show. I can't imagine actually getting on stage. I can't imagine, no way. Like, I wish people knew that they didn't have to, like, imagine it or think that it's possible. Like, do it anyway. Like, well, I didn't think for a second any of this would pan out.
Doesn't that speak to, you know, the self-belief that sometimes we don't have?
Yeah.
You know, and even though we want an outcome, and that could be anything, like you may not think that you could run a 5K or a marathon, right. Until it's done. But is it really that you can't see yourself doing it, or is it really that you don't believe that you'll commit long enough,
right,
to see the outcome play out?
Yeah, but even now I have so much more self-confidence, and again, not going back to the physical part, just in the things that I've set out to do and the barriers that I've broken through in this and out of this, right? Because you do evolve and you become a different person, so I have a lot of self-belief that I can do almost anything, but I still have a lot of things that I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do that.
Right.
So it's like, even the person that does have self-confidence and self-belief in their ability to achieve anything they put their mind to, because a lot of people say that, like, if I put my mind to it, like, I do it, and I know that I can overcome, and I've overcome things in the past. Still, a lot of times people like that hold themselves back because they think this is different.
Right.
The same way that if I look at something outside of this, a lot of times I'm like, I'm pretty sure I could do it if I set my mind to it, but
right.
well,
Exactly.
on another note, so you don't have to be able to imagine doing it or being able to do it or looking a certain way. Like, you don't have to be able to envision you as that. You just have to want to start it.
Right.
And be willing to just start it. Because if you start it, I mean, yeah, there are people that quit, but if you start it, chances are, like, you can find a way to keep yourself going.
Right. And the outcome is so much greater than, like she wrote in her post today, which is what motivated us to do this today. Like she said, it's so much more than the abs and the body that you get in the bikini. There's so much more to it. That was one of the things that led us to where we are now, where on the drive back home, our conversation was really about, she said, if I can get one more person to do this with me, that would be so cool.
Yeah.
And here we are, you know.
Lots of people later.
Lots of people later. So
the rest is history.
anything else that you want to add? I think that sums up the how she got started.
Yeah.
And we're not going to go into where we are, what we're doing next.
Yeah,
but
no, I think that's it.
I think that was great.
Did I miss anything?
No, I think that was really good.
Yeah.
So we've got a
it.
couple things that we've got mapped out.
Yes.
We'll talk a lot more about how things got started. Everybody likes to hear how things initiated.
We got a next one for you guys.
So we'll talk a lot more about that in an upcoming episode. And we got some interviews that we're lining up. So we've got some stuff going on. And now that things seem to be, you know, reopening.
From your lips to God's ears.
We will be doing a lot more stuff. So peace out, everybody.
Peace out. All right. It's super hot in here.